work with all of the adjoining owners to make sure that they're all okay with not impeding on the right-of-way for the trail. And we have, as of right now, complete 100% participation of no encroachments within the right-of-way. So the expansion of the trail from Severance to Eaton is underway. So it's pretty neat.
Okay,
And will begin next year.
great. Town Board Member Adams, Tree Board, Poudre River Trail Corridor Board.
I have no report for either of the councils.
Okay. And I have the Downtown Development Authority, which will meet later this month. And Mr. Baker attended the North Front Range MPO in my absence, as I attended the Mayor's Summit at CML last Thursday and Friday. So moving on to item 5 is the public invited to be heard. This is for individuals wishing to participate and to be heard on a non-agenda item. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. I don't believe we've had anybody who signed up this evening, but if there's anybody who wished to come forward at this time, now would be the time to come forward and address the board. Is there anybody this evening who wished to speak during the public invited to be heard? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item B, the consent calendar. The consent calendar this evening is comprised of 2 items: minutes of the August 28, 2017 regular meeting and the list of bills.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Mr. Adams to approve the consent calendar as presented. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the consent calendar passes unanimously. Moving on to section C, board action this evening. Our first item this evening is resolution number 2017-66, accepting and adopting the 2017 roadway improvement plan and road impact fee update prepared by Felsberg, Holt, and Ullveg in conjunction with Duncan Associates. This is legislative action, and Mr. Volstead will give presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Town Board. The town originally hired Felsberg, Holt, and Ullvig to prepare our road impact fee and road improvement plan back in 2001. It was subsequently updated in 2008, and this is the second comprehensive update that the town has done to since the road impact fee has been in place. In addition to the 5-year comprehensive update, we've also done some annual updates to reflect inflation and construction cost index. But this being the comprehensive update, Felsberg, Holt, and Ullvig and Duncan Associates were retained again. They've been the consistent team that the town has used since the adoption of the original ordinance. And this first item on the agenda is the adoption of the roadway improvement plan itself by resolution. And this was put together based on the research and data that they compiled following the kickoff meeting that we had early in the year, and then they incorporated the comments that we gave them from 2 different town board work sessions, as well as a stakeholder meeting. Windsor's population growth and the increased traffic levels since the 2000 update, combined with projections that population and employment will more than double by 2040, reinforce the need for this code-mandated update. Therefore, Town Board included this in the 2017 budget, and we're bringing the plan forth for adoption tonight. One thing I need to point out is the background indicates that the research and analysis resulted in a roadway improvement needs of approximately $136 million. After the last work session, we did make some tweaks to the map that took a little bit of the cost out of that and actually revised the needs down to $131.7 million due to those changes to the map. And this resulted in a reduction of approximately $20 to $25 per fee category as well. So if you, I included the handout from the last work session in the packet, and if you compared that handout to the actual fees in the ordinance, I just wanted to point out that that's where that $20 to $25 difference in each category comes from. Following the work sessions and stakeholder meeting, the input has been incorporated into the enclosed plan, and it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, Chapter 6, Transportation and Mobility, as well as conformance with the Vision 2025 document, the transportation elements of that. So with that, unless there are any questions, staff is recommending approval of the resolution adopting the road improvement plan.
Are there any questions, Mr. Baker?
What was the result, I can't tell on these maps, of that Country Farms Road? What's the determination on that?
It's still shown on the map as a minor collector. It was downgraded from its previous, the request from the HOA was that it be not shown as a, I can't remember the previous designation, but after review and upon recommendation from Felsberg, we did downgrade that to a minor collector.
Has there been any discussion with the HOA further, or they've been
We've-
updated?
We did send them the recommendation from Felsberg and the resolution, and we haven't heard anything. I mean, they acknowledged receipt, but we haven't had any comments since then.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any additional questions? Mr. Bennett?
How does this roadway improvement plan increase our chances of moving truck traffic from Main Street? And I know we don't have full information from CDOT, but what's your thoughts about our opportunities to reduce truck traffic on Main Street?
Well, it does identify projects that are on Main Street that may help, if they were prioritized in the short term, to alleviate traffic on Main Street or mitigate it somewhat. But as far as reducing actual truck traffic, it doesn't really address, I guess, reducing any one type of vehicle use of the road network.
If we follow the plan and improve some of our north-south routes, would that give us the opportunity to perhaps look at moving truck traffic a different way?
Yeah, I think if there were improvements that could strategically address truck traffic, that's a possibility. We didn't look at that specific. We were really looking at road impact or roadway improvement needs, connections, and widening of existing streets. And then that forms the basis for the road impact fee ordinance.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think it was pages 58 through 63. There were a couple options regarding the size of medians. And so just the options, and you don't have to look at, the options were a 12-foot median, 12-foot wide median, or a 16-foot wide median. What's the advantages or disadvantages of those?
What pages were those again?
Appendix B.
58 and 63. 58 to 63, there were some options and designs on width of medians. And what I'm thinking about, we've had a discussion earlier about gateways, landscaping the medians and so forth. So that's why I'm asking the question, just to understand what would the advantage of a 16-foot wide median be versus a 12-foot wide median?
That's not, it's in appendix, Scott. So
Okay.
it's roadway type, rural arterial is 16, and then major urban collectors 12,
Yeah,
medians,
right.
but, so it's in
My
your,
page numbers are probably different than what you have.
yeah, so it's in your, it's your drawings of your,
Okay. Off the top of my head, I'm not seeing.
Can you restate your question?
Just imagine, what's the advantage or disadvantages of a 12-foot versus 16-foot? And what I'm thinking about is, we've had a conversation about gateways and appropriate landscaping for that, and I'm thinking about costs, and highway costs as well as landscaping costs, gateways.
Well, and so these do have there are notes to these tables that allow for options to make them landscape medians in key locations. But I think the difference in the width in these two that you're referring to, the urban collector and the urban arterial, is probably more a function of lane widths for turning traffic and, but I don't know, Dennis, if you've got any thought on that?
Well, if you have a 16-foot median, then you can include in it a 4-foot raised concrete median or landscape. Whereas if it's 12 feet, well, you can use straight turn lane. So 12 feet for turn lane plus 4 feet for a raised median.
Okay,
Gives you 16.
okay, that makes sense. I apologize for asking a question that gets into the weeds. Okay, I just curious about that and thinking about the long-term costs and what opportunities we might have, particularly around gateways coming into our community. One last thing, just a comment. Even with these fee increase, I want to make sure everybody understands we're still looking at least $37 to $40 million shortfall of projected highway improvement needs that we'll have to consider from other sources. So.
Correct, it wouldn't
Yeah,
create, it
this does
wouldn't
not
recoup
pay the
on,
whole bill. Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Additional questions or comments, Mr. Adams?
Scott, I first want to commend whoever did all of this work and putting all these figures together. I think it's something we've been talking about for a long time, and it looks good. But now I have a couple of questions. The 31 million, as I understand it, that's a 23-year program. That is to 2040? That money will be spent?
That is the total amount of, the $131.7 million is the total it would take to undertake all of the projects that are listed in the plan, regardless of that's really not based on the time frame. The 2040 is really the time frame where the average daily traffic projections, they were projecting to 2040. So the 131 million is tied to the projects that are specifically outlined in the plan.
If we did them all,
Right.
okay.
And can I just ask a tag along, does not include maintenance
Correct.
on current existing roadways? That $140 million price tag only includes completion of new projects and or improvements to existing projects.
It has to add capacity to the road network. It can't be used for maintenance.
Okay.
Okay, my second question was, who decides the priorities of the construction work for the roads?
So good question, good lead in. Can I answer that? Scott?
I have one more.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say that upon approval of this, the next effort we are going to make internally is to start that effort, is to work on options of prioritization based upon what I'm hearing from you, and it's gonna probably include different variables like trucks. It's gonna probably include different variables like gateway, volume numbers. And so what I am going to do is lead kind of a multi-departmental group team to have that conversation over the next 2 months, and then ask that you talk about our work product at the end of that, probably by the end of the year, where we will develop probably 2 or 3 options for you to review and decide what you like as far as what we've worked on for prioritization. So we'll bring you a couple of lists, 3 lists, but they'll have to be based upon some variables. And then what I hope that you'll do is look at that and give guidance which one you like, what option you like, and modify if you need to. Then we can start doing a capital plan around that. And then you're also gonna probably decide how you can afford it or not, based upon either current capital or current road impact fee revenues. Or if you wanna seek other funding resources. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on that, Ivan, immediately after this is adopted.
That was my third question about when will we start? I think you answered basically, and I know it's gonna take time, but, I was just anxious to, what our goal is in starting.
Yeah, it's my.
I think you answered.
Right, no, it's my interest, that the board put this effort together. It's my interest for this board to have the discussion of priorities. So it's my goal to bring forth something that you can start a discussion and have that done prior to this board leaving in April.
Well, like I said, I was,
I'm just, the traffic model consists of existing and future projected land uses placed in transportation analysis zones that divide in the NFRPO MPO's area. The travel model generates trips for each land use type in each travel analysis zone, distributing these trips to other zones by assigning them through their existing and fiscally constrained. So they use the MPO model. So when that model gets changed, your ordinance says, or your resolution says that we will, if something happens in the next 5 years to change that model, we will come back and take that in consideration for this study. And so I think we're about 5 years we might have better information, but you're right, I think it is trending there, that's kind of the word, and so, but there's what was used.
Okay. And then under the objectives, it has item 1 and item 8. I'm assuming that means it should be item 2. We're not, are we missing 6 other items, or is that pulled
No.
out from?
Those are objectives from the comprehensive plan that we're basing our recommendation on. So the
Okay.
comp plan says extend roadways as development occurs, and also says consider the use of impact fees to accelerate state highway improvements. So that's just using that as direction to, or as to reinforce the recommendation
Okay.
to approve the resolution.
Okay. And so consider the use of impact fees for accelerated state highway improvements. Is that part of
Yeah.
our consideration?
So the plan, similar to the last update, includes the option to spend road impact fees on state highway projects that the town board wants to contribute to. So it doesn't obligate that, but it gives you the option if, say, a State Highway 392 interchange project or the roundabout in State Highway 257, if you want those to be eligible for road impact fee reimbursement, the plan and the road impact fee that's being proposed still give you that option. It's consistent with what was adopted 10 years ago.
So how is that handled? Is that just merely something, a discretion of the board if they want to tie into that?
Right,
Okay.
the expenditure of road impact fees is something that is at the board's discretion
Okay.
during the budget.
Those are all the questions I have. Anything further? If not, I would seek a motion on
Madam-
resolution number 2017-66.
Madam Mayor, I would move that we approve resolution 2017-66.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Adams and a second from Mr. Rennemeyer. All in favor of approving resolution 2017-66, vote yes. Opposed, no. And the resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to item 2, ordinance number 2017-1541, repealing, amending, and readopting Chapter 17, Article 15 of the Windsor Municipal Code with respect to road impact fees. This is first reading and legislative action. Mr. Volstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Town Board. So again, this is the road impact fee ordinance that is based on the improvement plan that you just adopted. And the road impact fee ordinance is actually included in chapter 17 of the municipal code. So the table of respective fees that is in chapter 17 is updated with this ordinance. And again, the ordinance requires that the town board look at the road impact fees every 5 years and do a comprehensive date such as this. And then we also look at it annually for an inflation adjustment. And this will essentially replace what we've been working off of, which was dated, but it is also one of the ways that growth pays its own way. These are fees that are assessed on a building permit when any new home or new commercial or industrial building is developed. So with that, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the Vision 2025 document, and staff is recommending approval of the ordinance on first reading.
And the approval this evening would accept the entire fee and not as staggered, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any additional questions? Mr. Baker?
And you said 5 years this will be looked at, every 5 years. Is that too long, or is it, why 5 years? Is there a cost reason? I'm sure these are expensive studies.
I think that's the time frame that was included in the update that was adopted in 2008. Before that, it only had the annual, and obviously we went through the downturn in this last time frame, so the board did decide to defer updating the fees just so that it wasn't an added burden on the economy at the time. I think 5 years is probably a good increment to be looking at it. It is a fairly big undertaking, and this year's study did take just over $70,000 to do the plan.
That's a good reason. Is this, we talked about increasing every year for inflation. Is that something, or are we just fixing this for 5 years? And
No, this is the 5-year comprehensive update. So we updated the improvement plan as well as the road impact fee ordinance. The annual update is based on CDOT inflationary construction cost index. And it may not always be an increase. There were a few years during the downturn that it was a decrease that was adopted. So the annual adjustment during the 5 years is really just to keep up with current cost of construction.
thank you.
Any additional questions for Mr. Ballstead? Do you know what percentage this equated to, what our increase was?
Across the board, I didn't do an average for the entire, I do know that the single-family homes is the biggest jump, and it's 77%.
77?
Mhm.
Do you know what it was before?
It went from 21, in the 21, 22 range to 37, 38 range. So,
About 1,500 a home.
yeah. And again, since we didn't update the table during the downturn, there is somewhat of a catch-up happening here.
Anything else? If not,
I have a comment.
okay, Mr. Baker?
I'm gonna support this, but nobody likes increasing fees. I think that's pretty obvious, but I think this is the fiscally responsible thing to do. And as Mr. Ballstead said, to make sure development pays its way for expansion of our roadway system. So it's not something we like voting on, but I think it's an important vote we have to do.
Okay. I would concur with that assessment, and I believe we did not hear any negative feedback from development concerning this.
We had a small turnout for the developer group, the stakeholders meeting. They didn't have a lot of negative comments. We did get a HBA concern just with fees increasing across the region in general, but at the end they did understand. They just had a concern with increased fees.
Right. So I too am gonna support this, but with some reservation because I know that where these fees are gonna be tacked onto is to the prices, and so again, I have concerns as we're trying to, deal with affordable housing. I think that that added additional increase, but we do have the opportunity, as we look at things, I guess, to address those at later times, so that's why I'm gonna be supporting this, even though, I also support us looking at, affordable housing for our area as well. Okay. Then I would seek a motion.
I move to approve ordinance number 2017-1541.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Mr. Baker approving ordinance number 2017-1541. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 3, ordinance number 2017-1542, an ordinance amending Chapter 6 of the Windsor Municipal Code, adding Article 5, enabling the establishment of entertainment districts pursuant to Title 42, Article 12 of the Colorado Revised Statute. First reading, legislative action, and presentation by Ms. Emo.
Thank you, Mayor Melendez, Town Board. Before you this evening is the ordinance to enable the establishment of entertainment districts within the town. We last met back in June discussing this concept. By way of background, these districts are authorized by the State General Assembly. They can be created to allow alcohol to be consumed in common consumption areas that are bordered by existing licensees. Under Colorado law, 2 or more licensed liquor premises may share a common consumption area inside an approved entertainment district. This common consumption area is a defined space where alcohol is sold by any of the participating licensed premises may be carried and consumed anywhere in that area instead of being confined to just the licensed premises where the beverage was purchased. This was presented to the Downtown Development Authority on August 16th, 2017. That was met with approval in a nutshell. I have, if you would like detail on what is before you, I am willing to go into that. I don't know how much more information you would like.
Okay,
Yes,
questions? Mr. Rennemeyer.
I'm just throwing this out there for what it is. The structure that burned to the ground a month ago was kind of the business entity that was interested in the entertainment district, wasn't it?
No.
No?
But we anticipated that they would be interested in this when they
Okay.
got up and
I
running.
just, what's that?
I hope this is the one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, I just didn't
It's
remember we
okay.
talked about that they
Yeah,
were gonna be
that was
interested in it
anticipated, and the DDA also anticipated all sorts of things in their big plans, so.
Okay. I just wondered if this had all changed due to recent events and
No,
stuff as far as.
what's in front of you is just the enabling ordinance. It's not creating any entertainment district tonight. It's just saying that we will allow the creation of entertainment districts if you meet the criteria set forth by the state and by us.
Okay.
Mr. Baker?
How long does the entertainment district last if we approve one? Is it in
It is subject to
perpetuity?
annual review
Okay.
by both the town board and the local licensing authority.
Okay.
So they have to, much like a liquor license, they have to jump through all the hoops, fill out all the applications. In an entertainment district, though, the promotional association has to be recertified each year also. So they have to meet all of their criteria, and they also follow the same types of things. They have to meet the needs and desires of the neighborhood, that they're not a safety risk to the area. And the way we have set this up would allow you to have, the town board to have the ability to create an individual district. Yet if it's not meeting what you would like to see, you also have the ability to revoke that entertainment district.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? So this is first reading. If we approve it in second reading, what's the timeline when a party goes to fulfill the application? How long does that process take, do we know?
That's still really in creation. They would have to, the promotional association would have to apply. We have to create those forms yet, but
Okay.
they would have to fill out the application and pay the application fee, which is set in the ordinance. The initial application fee is $500. Renewals will be for $100. But then the anticipation would be, be reviewed in-house, and assuming everything fit the basic requirements in order to have a certified promotional association, then it would be presented to you, to the town board for review and approval in a resolution with any and all concerns addressed within that creation of that entertainment district.
So are we really maybe not looking at starting this until the first of the year, even after, or does it can it begin, or will it begin as soon as we have adoption of the ordinance?
Perhaps I can answer that. Once the ordinance is adopted and takes effect, so figure about a month out from second reading, someone could satisfy our application requirements and get before you, it's October, perhaps before the end of the year, it's possible.
Okay.
I mean, it would take some review, and again, administratively, we still need to get set up for this.
Okay, okay. As the liaison to the DDA can tell you that the board members, I think, found this interesting and found it to be perhaps another additional exciting tool that could be used as a way to get, and entice folks to want to come and be downtown. I think that it's going to take maybe acquiring some new folks to come downtown, maybe in order for this to really work. But I think for the most part, they were excited about this and the potential opportunity that something like this, a tool, could use. And I believe I've asked our chief of police, and he had no reservations about formulating a district and the kind of safeguards that are necessary, and believe that we could do that and have everybody handle it as they need to be. So, Mr. Adams?
Kim, as I read through this, I wondered what is different from this entertainment center from what we've been doing in the park and what we did at the festival with the beer garden.
Well,
Is it, how much
those are
different
more
is
like
it?
special event permits. It's not an entertainment district where you have two licensed premises that are attaching to a common consumption area. The beer gardens, that's, somebody is running that, and they have a designated area that they can operate in. Like in the park, you can't bring your personal alcohol into that beer garden area. That part would be the same. You can't bring separate alcohol within that common consumption area. It has to just be from the licensed premises. But it's a different process. Those are not entertainment districts.
I just wondered, as I read all that, I thought, what's really different?
Well, I don't want to speak for Mr. Adams, but is he referring to something like the Wine Fest where it's
And show.
Every third Thursday or every Thursday, is there anything like that stipulated?
That is what, well, first of all, the way we're setting this up is like that.
Okay. Any additional questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move to approve ordinance number 2017-1542.
Second?
The motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer, a second from Mr. Bennett, approving ordinance numbers 2017-1542. Those in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the ordinance passes unanimously. Moving on to item 4, ordinance number 2017-1543, and the various fees associated therewith, and reaffirming the establishment of the town's stormwater drainage utility enterprise. First reading and legislative action, and Mr. Wagner will give presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Town Board. And also the first update of that plan. And the fees that were put in place with the 2003 Master Drainage Plan haven't been updated, with the exception of, I believe, one cost factor. I think it went up, one of the monthly fees went up from $1.70 to $2.20 at some point. I don't remember which year that is. So the other fees have been the same for 14 years. So the town hired Anderson Consulting Engineers out of Fort Collins, who did the original master plan, and they're considered experts in this area, in the area of drainage planning. And so they prepared this update, which took a look at 4 of our drainage basins. The town's growth management area has 10 distinct drainage basins in it. And we chose 4 of those because they seem to have the most growth and development pressures right now. And we felt like we're lacking, some of the most lacking areas of master planning. So we took a look at those 4 basins. And in 2003, the master plan prescribed $15.6 million worth of improvements, and the town since 2003 has done about 20 of the projects. And I was thinking about what the major projects were that I can recall, and the first one that came to mind was back in 2002-03. The town dredged Windsor Lake here, and also we moved the control gates on the reservoir downstream, which allows it to be a major stormwater detention pond. And so that was the first major improvement that we did out of the master plan. Another one is the Law Basin pre-disaster mitigation project on the east side of town, which was just finished last year. And then kind of along with that, it's sort of a complement to that, the west basin of the west tributary of the Law Basin was, those improvements were done, finished last year also. And so those were several $million-dollar projects. So the 2017 update, they took a look at the costs for improvements that need to be done over the next 30 years, and the figure now is $35.7 million. And our drainage fees, first of all, we have what's called a new growth basin impact fee, and that is the fee that new development, new building permits pay to build in Windsor. And so it's a one-time fee, and it's a capital fee. It goes towards the $37.5 million. Then every existing property, developed property in Windsor, pays a monthly fee, and that's broken into 2 parts. One part is a operation and maintenance, and just like it says, it's to go to operation and maintenance of our drainage department. And the second part is a basin improvement fee, and that revenue goes to supplement the new growth basin impact fee that I just mentioned is charged on building permits. So the Windsor Water and Sewer Board looked at this in these fees in this master plan update in June. After discussion, they recommended that we start with raising the new growth basin impact fee, the one-time fee, 20% above what it is today. And then it's calculated backwards what you need for a monthly basin improvement fee to bring that up to the $35.7 million that we need over 30 years. And the monthly O&M fee that we need to fund our drainage department. Those fees are in the table that's in the memorandum. I'll bring that up here real quickly. This is it. And also, if you recall back in July when you had a work session, we had a comparison of other entities, those being Greeley, Longmont, Fort Collins, and Loveland, and how their fees compared to ours. And we had a question, if you recall at the time, about Longmont, and following that work session, we looked into it closer, discovered an error that we had in the Longmont fees, and this table in your memorandum reflects the corrected Longmont fee. So the ordinance that's before you has the fees that are recommended by the Windsor Water and Sewer Board, and the ordinance also, I want to mention, has a stipulation that there will be annual adjustments in the fee rates to account for construction cost inflation based on the Colorado Construction Cost Index by the Colorado Department of Transportation. And then a more detailed review of projects' costs will be done every 5 years. Of course, all the fees ultimately have to be approved by the town board. But with that, I'll ask for any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Bennett?
You know, I may not be seeing it, but if we go with the recommended fee increase, how close does that get us to the projected 35.7 million?
It's right at the 35.7.
Right at it.
It generates 35.7.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. So we still have about, out of that 54 total projects, there are about 34 remaining?
Yes, that's from the 2003 master plan, I believe.
So have we
We've-
identified even additional to that?
Yes, we've identified with this, these 4 basins that have been updated. There are some additional projects in there.
Okay. So I don't expect you to have this answer, but we are approving, at least initially, a lot of different fees, or we're looking at fees. So at some point, I'd like to see what that total increase means to development in terms, especially in terms of single family. Like what it, where, you know, like what's that total number at the end of the day after we've approved or made approval of all these? How much more is that looking like for, on the development side?
We can probably have that even by next meeting, right? We can get that information to you before next
Okay.
week.
Any additional questions or comments?
May I ask a question, Dennis?
Yes.
Dennis, so, just reviewing, for me, remind me, sorry. So this is gonna be reviewed annually. There's components of the consumer cost inflation. And then there's in 5 years, beginning in 2022, so it's 5 years out, we'll go through and do another assumptions and review. Does that include the operations? Because by then, we'll be well under our way with the MS4 permit. And that probably will have some impact, I'm assuming, potentially to the operation. So is that probably the anticipated modification that will be coming
I
5
would
years from now?
I would expect so, yes.
Does this ordinance restrict the board? So you'll get a briefing here next month, I think it is scheduled, for your stormwater permit that you're going to need to start implementing over the next, actually, we're gonna talk about an ordinance, and then we're gonna talk about an implementation plan over 4 to 5 years. But if the board, for some reason, wanted to implement or not pass those costs on, but if there's some increased costs, associate that before 5 years, could they do it outside of this ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. But that's certainly gonna be, I think that's gonna probably be the one component 5 years out. You're gonna evaluate if there's some impact to this, so just see. Thank you for indulging me on that moment.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 2017-1542.
Second.
1543.
43.
43, okay. A motion on the floor from Mr. Bennett, a second from Mr. Adams, approving ordinance number 2017-1543. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the ordinance passes unanimously. Moving on then to item 8. This evening, resolution number 2017-68, approving an agreement for economic inducements and development incentives for Dutch Brothers Coffee. Legislative action. Ms. Johnson will give presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Town Board members. Tonight, we're going to bring forth a incentive request, much similar to how we did with advanced roofing, and we believe that this falls in guidelines with what we've done in the past and kind of meets what we've done prior. So early in this year, I met Mr. Frary, and he came in to talk and discuss about the opportunity of redeveloping the property at 901 Main Street, which, as many of you know, is the former car lot dealership. It's been several car dealerships recently, but previously it had been, I believe, a burger.
Big Burger.
Big Burger. So during that time, I had, during those vacancy times, I had tried to fill that space with other retailers every time the car dealerships had gone out, but unfortunately, the lease rate that was on there was extraordinary, and so I was unable to attain any retailers at that spot until hopefully now. So I'll give you some details on the project. So again, here's a map and identity location. This is the southwest corner of Main Street and 9th. And it is the redevelopment of the current facility there that's just over 1,000 square feet. The total project cost with purchasing and redeveloping it is $1.6 million. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment that'll be going in are about $137,000, and the use is a drive-through coffee shop. So as you see in your memo, there's several things that when Mr. Ferry came in to discuss with us that we required for the redevelopment of that property. He was asked to close off the 2 CDOT access points right off of 392 to complete the sidewalk all the way in the front and connect to the property to the west. To continue, there's more landscaping going to be required on that site, as well as knocking down the annex building that is on the western portion of that to complete the circular drive motion that they need to get for the drive-through that's there. And then in addition to that, he's going to replace all the asphalt, tear up all the asphalt that's in there because it just is not in good condition. So he's replacing all of that around the building, as well as upgrading the whole entire electrical use for that building as well. So when he compiled all of the requirements that we asked them to do with development review that would get it up to code and what would be required for redevelopment, as well as some other things that his property required, there was about a $300,000 gap that came down to if he was just to go to a greenfield site and to build it. So we talked about potential incentives for the site, and I think we've come up kind of with some opportunity that'll assist a little bit. It's not quite getting that entire gap, but it's just to help a little bit to offset the redevelopment. So we've come up with the development fee waivers of the admin and the Windsor use tax. Both of those equate to about $11,000. And then a sales tax share back, only 50% of the 3% because we don't count that 0.95. That's the dedicated fund that goes to the rec center for 5 years, which would equate to approximately $91,000 based off of documents that Mr. Ferry has supplied. So the total incentive request over 5 years would be $102,000. Here's the total copy of our building permit fee estimate that you can see. So specifically, our waiver of an admin fee is about $1,000, and then our use tax is about $10,000. The income from the property year 1 is estimated about $25,000 with a 5-year total of $183,000. And so if you just use the sales tax of that 3%, it is a little bit over. It's 5.6 years. I know we totally try to usually keep them under 5. But we don't know what the real and personal property tax. That's why I threw in the FF&E and then the property tax with the valuation going up in the redevelopment. So I'm not sure exactly what we'll gain on those, but that is something to be determined that we can add in and keep checking on to see where we're at with revenue from that. And then the revenue for 5 years to the rec center would be about $58,000 back to them as well. This does not have any effect on the Economic Development Incentive Fund because there are no enterprise funds that would be waived with this. It's simply in-house fees that we charge. So tonight I'm requesting approval of Resolution 2017-68, which is the incentive agreement for fee waivers and sales tax shareback with DB Windsor LLC, or AKA Dutch Brothers. Mr. Nate Frary is here in the audience tonight if you would like to speak to him as well.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Johnson,
Yeah.
Mr. Baker?
Do you see any of these expenses as extraordinary, like paving the new asphalt to me is a normal expense when you open a new business, the same as maybe removing the annex building?
Well, for circular motion, the way we asked them to do that, we asked them to take down that building.
Okay.
So that was something that was requested in development review. I think there's a little bit unique situation because to help close off those accesses and make it actually put in the sidewalk in a new development, there would be sidewalk required. 9 times out of 10, you're correct on that. I think instead of just paving over the asphalt and ripping it all out is something a little bit more costly probably than normal. And really just getting this as a viable retail entity again is why we're asking for help with the assistance tonight. So I did try, I had several people that I brought in there to try to get in there, and without getting into too much detail, it was very, very expensive to try to lease that property, so.
And what about putting a cap on the sales tax revenue? Because these guys are gonna do great right there. And is there any consideration to putting a cap on the sales tax rebate?
We can absolutely revisit that. Right now, we just have it at an estimate of 91 or 5 years. We didn't put a cap in the agreement, if I'm correct, Mr. McCarger. Yeah, so if they go through the roof and do extremely well, you are correct, it could be more than that, but we could put a cap on it as well. These are based off of totals of what their current facility is, the average of what they're running right now, both in Fort Collins and Loveland.
Okay, and that cap would happen tonight, or is that? Can do it down the
I think we
road.
should. I don't know why you go back and try and figure that out later. I mean, if you have a interest of putting a cap on it, you should express that tonight. And
Okay, I would be interested if anyone else is, I don't.
What are you proposing, Mr. Baker?
Well, I think the estimate was 91,000 in sales tax rebate over 5 years, or 5.6 years. I would suggest we cap that at 91,000, so,
No.
because I think they're gonna do great, and I'm wondering if they're gonna exceed that cap, or exceed that estimate. I'll just throw that out there for anyone.
I think it's all in the way, and I'm sorry to, Jed, I think it's all in the way it's written. I think because are we talking about an open-ended timeframe?
No, it's for 5 years from date of open.
5 years, could be whatever, such as Mr. Baker's referring to, versus they get that in the first year or something, then what he's saying is to have it fixed, where it's up to 91, and when they get there,
correct.
okay?
I would support that idea. If they get there in a year or 2 years, great. If it takes them 5, then so be it.
Now, I have a question on the Shareback itself. So how does that work? Do they still present 100% of the sales tax to us and we give a check, or they only present 50%? Or how does that work?
No, they fully submit in cooperation with our finance department the sales tax revenue, because they complete it for 3.95. And then usually semi-annually or even just once a year, we would supply them with a rebate check based off of what they had paid in, only 50% of the 3%, retaining the full 0.95,
Okay.
0.95%.
Does the cap present a problem to the applicant if we choose to do a cap this evening?
I think, I understand the thinking behind it, but the original number that is the gap between one of our typical buildings is actually 300,000. And so, I don't wanna request the whole 300,000, but, I agree, I think we're gonna do great there. But even for the 5 years, if we do great and get there in 2 years, it also means that the city got the $91,000 in 2 years also, that I don't think you guys were getting from the car lot. And I think some of the biggest difference in the cost is paying a premium for an existing facility that's really outdated, and that's kind of like where the asphalt, my engineers determined that it just needs to be replaced, and we kind of want to bring it up to code and snuff and make it super nice. And so, it would be nice to just have the full 5 years, and if we do great, we can kind of recoup some of that, and then, the town also still gets 50% of it, which, like I said, is still 50% more than if it sits there empty.
Yeah, Mr. Rennemeyer?
Well, I didn't mean, I'm not, just letting you know.
Oh.
I just wanted to ask you, since you're the developer of the project, which is the numbers that she had for sales
Yeah.
estimates, is that an average of sales? Is that a good location?
That's
Is that,
based on the average of what our 2 existing stores here in northern Colorado are doing, which we
Okay.
opened in June of last year in North Loveland, and then opened at the end of, in December in Fort Collins on Timberline Road.
Okay.
So I just felt that was as real as we could get to the local market here. Obviously, I hope that it's more here, but, you know, that's,
So just, Mr. Adams, before I go to you, for myself and maybe for some others who when they have found out what's going there, I've heard folks say, not another coffee shop. I'm not familiar with your coffee shop, although I have kids who are,
Yeah.
who say that you are uniquely different. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you are different and perhaps not just another coffee shop?
for sure. And I think the easiest way to say it is we're actually a people business and really are driven to build relationships with our customers and the communities that we're in. Dutch Bros, it's a franchise based out of Southern Oregon, but all the franchises have to be locally owned and operated. So, little history on myself, my wife and I owned some Dutch Bros franchises in Washington State for 9 years. And we always had a big dream to relocate and open Dutch Bros in northern Colorado. So we sold our 4 stores back to Dutch Bros headquarters at the beginning of 2016 and relocated here to start over. And we're just, again, when I say that we're like a people-based business, you know, we spend a ton of time doing things in the community, giving back through donations and charities. Like on the 29th of this month, every Dutch Bros is doing what we call our annual Buck for Kids Day. And we're all donating $1 from every drink we sell to a local nonprofit organization. We here work with the Boys and Girls Club. We just wrote a $7,000 check in July to Relay for Life. Wrote a $15,000 check to the MDA in May. And so, you know, we're really driven to do more, and it just happens to be that coffee is the medium that we use to do what we do. And we're super focused on creating a really awesome, fun place for our employees and our customers to come and hang out and just love people and making everybody's day and getting them hyped up on coffee.
And it is just coffee products, right? Is there
No, I
any-
mean, we do specialty coffee. Dutch Bros has its own private labeled energy drink that we do. We have iced teas, hot teas, smoothies, our own version of a milkshake that we call the Dutch Frost. And so we've got lots of different varieties. And, you know, a big reason that we desire to be in this specific location is to be near the schools, primarily the high school. It's our business model and approach to customer service and the relationships really hits well with like the high school demographic, and it's just a cool, fun, safe place for that age group to kind of come and hang out and hopefully keep them out of trouble.
Okay, Mr. Adams.
Well, I think he just led into my comment, because I don't know if you were concerned, and I know that they don't have a decision to make in it, but I called the school district and talked to the superintendent about this being right across the street from a middle school.
Yeah.
And my concern was safety, and the board and the school people said they're not concerned. They have confidence in us as a board and the staff with the town that safety will be a consideration, and I'm hoping that they will have that consideration too, because there are a lot of kids in that school, and there continue to be a lot of kids, and the crossing is right there. So, but they said they didn't have a concern.
Okay, Mr. Bennett?
From Ms. Johnson, how does the proposed rebate of sales tax in this recommendation compare to what we've done to comparable businesses?
It's about the same. I usually only recommend about 50%, not a full reimbursement from that standpoint. It also depends on the cost, the gaps, for how long we go. I know Advanced Roofing, we used some of their revenue to help offset the cost of their fee waivers. They had a new build, so they had more fees, and it worked out better to do that. So this is typical, normal 50% is what we've done.
For a period of 5 years.
Typically, yeah, or usually you can do whatever you want to do. That's at your discretion. We've never set any binding rules that say you have to do 5 years or less or 10 years less. I just know that we're pretty conservative and like to keep it in 5 years or less and then be done with that agreement so that we can move on to other
Can you
projects.
go back to the slide with the numbers on it?
And I'm just thinking about equity,
Thank you.
like businesses with the same, not equal, instead of equitable treatment of comparable business in the same industry.
Right, and normally that would be the case, but some previous ones that we've had have chosen to lease and not purchase a building, nor have they chosen to redevelop an existing building that has unfortunately a lot of work that needs to be done to it to make it a viable retail entity that we would gather money from. Mr. Ferry is correct in the fact that with no sales tax on automobile, we weren't getting any sales tax being generated from the car dealerships being located in that. They didn't sell parts or do oil changes or anything there, and believe they did not do that. So we weren't receiving any revenue off of that site except for just property tax.
Okay, anything else? So I guess I would not be in favor of imposing this stop on this, because to me it feels like we would be penalizing a business for doing better. And why do we want to penalize our businesses in our community to not go out and do as well as they can? We want them to do and be able to live up to the best of their ability. And to me, this somewhat penalizes them because if they do better. And it is a pretty good shortfall of what the true gap is to begin with. So I think this is very reasonable in consideration to other incentives that have come before us before. And I think with every reason, we probably will have a sooner, worst case scenario for us is we have a sooner payback than the 5.6 years. But we are allowing a business to do what they need to do to be successful in our community.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
I would say I've actually talked to some other developers here locally, and they have nothing but good things to say about you, personally. So I am confident in your ability to partner with the town and be a great business here. I also appreciate your ability to see this development for what it could be, this redevelopment of the site from what it has been in the past, since I've lived here over 10 years. So with that, I'll be supporting this as presented.
Anything else, Mr.
I have a
Baker?
comment. I'm gonna support this because I think my cap obviously was not embraced, and I'm excited that you're using existing infill property. I would not vote for it if it was greenfield. But I don't think you should say that they would be penalized when they're getting an incentive. I don't think it's a penalty to give them, $91,000+ of taxpayer dollars. So I would disagree with your language about the penalty. If there was a cap, I don't think it would be a penalty.
Okay.
And it is for 5 years, so there is it's 5 years, it's not an early payoff.
Right. Well, except for us, our payback could be earlier than the 5.6 that's being projected,
Gotcha.
our return on.
No, thank you, I understand.
May I ask one last question? It does start 5 years following the opening date. When is the projected opening date?
I would love to say March. I think the agreement has May, which gives a little bit of a safety cushion just in getting through the permitting process. And then I had the joy of doing a project in the winter in Loveland, and weather just never works the way you hope it is when you're trying to build something. So
Okay.
it would be projected between March and May.
Thank you.
And going off of what Mr. Arnold just said, when does the agreement start? Is it now? Is it upon opening?
On opening days.
On opening day.
Mhm.
Okay.
I guess I did have a question, because I think in the agreement by May first, that the agreement is null and void? Is there, just with any crazy unknown?
So I would suggest that you come back for this group in February and ask for extension, if you get to know that.
Yeah, we have a process for extension.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions or comments? If not, then I would seek a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 2017-68.
Second?
Motion on the floor from Mr. Redemeyer and a second from Mr. Bennett approving resolution number 2017-68. All in favor vote yes and opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Town Board members.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Moving on to item 9, site plan presentation. Homesteaders Landing subdivision, Lot 3, site plan, 901 Main Street redevelopment, Dutch Brothers Coffee. Staff presentation. Presentation from Ms. Malone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Town Board. This is the same site as presented by Ms. Johnson. This site is located on Lot 3 of the Homesteaders Landing subdivision, 901 Main Street. The site plan was reviewed in accordance with the Qualified Commercial and Industrial Site Plan, which is section 7910 of the Municipal Code, which outlines the site plan process and criteria. Again, the site is located on the southwest corner of 9th Street and Main Street, also State Highway 392, strategically located south of the middle school and southeast of the high school. This property is zoned commercial business. It's surrounded by other commercial business properties as well as general commercial, residential, mixed use, residential, and single family. The existing conditions include a number of mature trees as shown here, as well as mostly pavement on this site. Along Main Street are 2 large curb cuts. Per the CDOT access control plan, CDOT has asked the applicant to close those off, with the 9th Street drive here remaining open. The former use was a car sales lot, as discussed earlier. To tie into Ms. Johnson's presentation, there is a sign here enticing people to come because of no sales tax on vehicles. The site plan proposes keeping the large mature trees, this one especially, good 3-4 stories tall tree here, and all these trees along 9th Street. They will also keep the existing trees in this area. The drive-through will have a lane here, and stacking will occur in this area here. There'll be a drive-up window located on the west side of the building, and a pickup window here for pedestrians, and an outdoor seating area in this area. The applicant is closing off the drive here and improving the sidewalk in this area and adding a pedestrian connection leading to the pickup window and another pedestrian access off of 9th Street. The landscaping will be added along Main Street. There's also landscaping proposed for underneath the existing trees, as well as along the western boundary here, buffering the property of the west, which is an existing business, and then additional landscape improvements in this area. The trash receptacle is located over here, and let's see, and this overhang on the building will be enhanced. These are the proposed building elevations, which keep the character of the building, which was built in 1966, and adding some stone treatment as well as composite siding and some black. And the site plan was reviewed in accordance with the comprehensive plan, and this proposal is supported by Chapter 5B and 5D. The goal of maintaining the character of the community while accommodating future growth that is fiscally and environmentally responsible, and prioritizing new growth in areas currently served by the town's infrastructure and services. And the economic vitality chapter of Vision 2025 also pertains to this proposal. That concludes my presentation, and the applicant is here as well, as you know, to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments concerning the site plan? This is our only chance to review this, correct? So if anybody has anything, now would be the time. Mr. Baker?
Yeah. Is CDOT requiring the closing of the access there?
That is correct.
Okay. Will there be left turn onto 9th out or into the facility?
The traffic patterns on 9th out won't be changing, if that answers your question. You'll still be able to make a left
Out of the property?
Mhm.
Okay. And is there indoor seating, or is it all that outdoor patios?
I believe it's all outdoor.
Okay, that's what I thought. And how many cars will you stack in that drive-through? It looked pretty big.
They're showing 4 cars stacked there next to the menu board, but that lane can fit quite a few more cars.
I think the total is about 12.
Please come forward.
Sorry. I think it all the way back to even before where the first arrow pointing north is there at the
You can use
south.
the mouse works there as well.
Maybe.
This is trippy. This little guy right here.
Okay.
From this point to where the car is at the window, there's about up to 12 cars stacking.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yep. Sorry.
Any additional questions, Mr. Rennemeyer?
My only concern kind of goes along with that, and maybe this involves police chief too, but if the stacking, because I remember when Krispy Kreme opened, I mean, down where I lived, when I lived down in South Denver, and the line was wrapped around the building for weeks. And assuming you have that kind of opening where the stacking leads out onto 9th, how does that get mitigated, or how does that get controlled without it impeding 9th Street, I guess? If, you know, where they start stacking out there, they only turn in when spaces become available and obviously allow cars to still exit, you know, the property.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that, I guess, is where I'm really going.
One of our plans for relief of that is having the large number of parking stalls over here on the east side.
Okay.
This is significantly over-parked per the use requirement from the code. And so it's, the idea is if the vehicles are stacked up, then cars will park and walk up to the walk-up window. And then this is a bypass lane for the parked cars to pass the drive-through. And operationally, we're typically about twice as fast as the standard drive-through. We actually do, like Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out Burger, if you've ever heard of that awesome place. We send somebody out to take orders in line so that we're always a few cars ahead, and our ideal time per car is 30 to 60 seconds for our drive-through. So, I mean, I hope I'm hanging out with the Krispy Kreme guys, you know, obviously not creating problems, but, you know, and again, like, having the 12 cars gives us a pretty solid cushion to accommodate that, you know, if we do get a large volume of.
I just would rather plan for the worst case scenario in a good way than.
Yeah, totally.
The only other thing, I've been to the location in North Loveland,
Yeah.
and I believe that it's kind of like, not to state one of your competitors, like a human being, and I could be wrong, where there's 2 windows, I
Yeah.
believe, on that location, which obviously helps service and move
Yeah.
cars quicker and stuff. Obviously, does this not allow for that? I mean,
Yeah,
given the-
that site is a little over twice the size of this, the parcel.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, utilizing, keeping the existing structure, which we were driven to do that because of the nostalgic look of it from the 1960s, being right in, you know, downtown, just doesn't allow for that. Operationally, interior wise, we can still crank out the same volume of drinks with one window.
Okay.
So it's really just a mental perception that I'm still trying to figure out. Is 4 cars in each window just seems different than 8 cars in one, but we can only do so much interior wise, so kind of get the same result.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah.
What's the total number of parking spaces on this site?
It's 17 if you include the handicaps.
Okay. So are those spaces though gonna be utilized by employees or?
Most likely just the ones on the south,
Okay.
and down here would be for employees.
Okay,
And then, I mean, we're not relying on it, but being over there quite a bit lately, there's, you know, parking on the side of 9th Street as well, but we're not relying on that for our employees or anything, so.
okay.
We've discussed, probably the most difficult time will be a good winter storm. He'll have to figure out how to get the snow in and out around there somehow, so. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good site plan.
And forgive me if I missed this, how many employees do you employ at this location?
The goal is around 20 to 25, mostly part-time employees
Okay. Great.
Hours?
of operation. 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week.
Wow, that's late.
Anything further? Okay, if not, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Malone. Moving on to item 11, resolution number 2017-70, making certain findings of fact concerning the Diamond Valley annexation to the town of Windsor, determining substantial compliance with section 31-12-101. Mr. McCarter, can you remind me what the next phrase, how you pronounce that?
Ex sequitur?
Ex sequitur. Colorado Revised Statute, the Municipal Annexation Act of 1965, and establishing dates for public hearings before the Planning Commission and the Town Board of the Town of Windsor, Colorado, with regard to the Diamond Valley annexation. Legislative action, Mr. Ballstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Town Board. This is a statutory requirement that the Town Board pass this resolution, making the findings of fact and establishing the Planning Commission and Town Board public hearing dates. So there's no action on the actual annexation tonight. This is just a statutory requirement to set those dates. And to give you some background on the property, the plat that was included in your packet shows the property to be annexed. It's on the north side of Eastman Park Drive, approximately 1 mile east of State Highway 257 at the northeast corner of Eastman Park Drive and Howard Smith Avenue going into Kodak. The property is owned by Extraction Oil and Gas, and the Town of Windsor and Extraction entered into an agreement a couple of years ago when they at the time were planning an oil transload facility at the site. And in order to obtain municipal sewer service that they were looking for at the time, we entered into the agreement agreeing to annex the property within a certain time frame. And as part of that agreement, if it wasn't annexed by a date certain, the town could initiate those proceedings by submitting the annexation petition under the power of attorney that was granted at that time. So with that, the town has been still working with the applicant, with the property owner Extraction, and we are initiating the annexation proceedings because we missed the previous deadline and we want to clean up this annexation and get it in town. It does have a producing oil and gas pad on the northern portion of the property, and although it was originally intended to be an oil and gas transload facility, I don't believe that plan is going to go forward. I don't believe anybody's here tonight from Extraction. They're well aware of the proceedings, and the town attorney's meeting is having ongoing discussions with their attorney to wrap up the annexation agreement, and I'm working with their staff to get this plat finalized. But it will essentially satisfy the requirements of the pre-annexation agreement, bring the property into town. It'll be consistently zoned with the industrial properties to the east, and it is contiguous with another industrial property on the west. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution establishing those public hearing dates and making certain findings of fact.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Ballstead? So, is this basically just kind of a cleanup of?
Yeah, at the time, they were going through a use by special review application with Weld County. They needed our municipal services. We needed some easements for a sewer force main in Eastman Park Drive. So we came to a mutual agreement, and they agreed to also annex for those services. And even though the use by special review never came to fruition, they are using the property for some other staging of materials and supplies. And part of the agreement that the attorneys are working on will clean up some access points where they aren't, I guess, they aren't intended for commercial or industrial traffic, and so there's some tracking issues and some issues with the existing access points that'll be cleaned up with this as well by moving that access point to align with Howard Smith Avenue. And from my conversations with Extraction, they are hoping to get those road improvements in within the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay. So does this satisfy then everything that is needed at this point, Mr. McCarter?
For the annexation, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess I should just point out that those public hearing dates that we're establishing are October 18th for the Planning Commission and October 23rd for Town Board. So then you will actually see the annexation before you at that time
Okay.
for action.
Okay. Anything further? If not, I would seek a motion.
Move that we approve resolution number 2017-70.
Second?
Motion on the floor from Mr. Bennett and a second from Mr. Renemeyer approving resolution number 2017-70. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to item 12, resolution number 2017-71. Resolution approving an exclusive negotiation agreement and letter of intent between and among the Town of Windsor, Windsor Downtown Development Authority, and Brinkman Capital LLC with respect to downtown redevelopment. Legislative action, Mr. McCarter will give presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What's before you tonight brings a vibrant partner into the downtown area. Brinkman Capital has presented its qualifications to the Downtown Development Authority with interest in helping develop a plan of redevelopment for what we call the DDA backlots. basically from about the 600 block east into the 300 block on the north side of the existing buildings, that area that is bordered by the railroad tracks between the back of the building and the tracks. Brinkman has presented its qualifications, and the DDA is interested in working with them. So this is the first step. There are portions of this agreement that are binding, and then there are portions that are non-binding. I think the important thing, flying at 30,000 feet, is to recognize that what we're trying to do is get Brinkman to devote its attention to the creation of a potential redevelopment agreement. The redevelopment agreement, if it comes to pass, will contain the binding terms that get us to a redevelopment. Until that time, the parties are committing to, I'll call it dating, but not getting married quite yet. The terms of the agreement, though, do give us a window during which, over roughly the next year, we will pursue the effort at coming up with ideas for a redevelopment plan. Once those ideas are presented to us, then we will work on negotiating a redevelopment agreement. I do want to point out one thing that is missing in this agreement, and it was due to my haste to get the materials into your packets on Thursday morning, and that is section C, capital C 1B, makes reference to a timeline, the following timeline, but there is no timeline set forth in the agreement. We are expecting Brinkman to present that to us, and we will incorporate that into this agreement. What I'm asking of you tonight is to approve it, understanding that we still must insert the timeline, but we expect that timeline again to be within roughly the next year. That is my presentation on this topic. It's an exciting development in terms of getting someone who is in the business of redevelopment. You may recall that Brinkman is involved in the Loveland redevelopment, which is a very complicated and large project, and this is just another opportunity for that company to bring its energy into Windsor and come up with ideas for redeveloping the back lots.
Okay, Mr.
And
Arnold?
if I may just add, I think Ian did a great job of describing. I do want to remind the board that there was a selection process that was coordinated through the DDA and the town. There were some town staff and the mayor participated in those interviews of some qualified developers, and this was a recommended group that we brought forward. So I just wanted to remind you that we did have a place at the table in this selection process also.
Okay. Questions? Mr. Rennemeyer?
So are we approving tonight without item 1B and C?
C1B, yes, that's correct.
C1B, okay.
I'm asking you to approve it with the understanding that we will insert the timetable once it's presented by Brinkman.
Okay.
The DDA will be looking at this at its meeting, which I believe is on the 19th of this month. And so by then, we will have the approved timeline built into the agreement.
On the 20th.
Is it the
DDA will be
20th?
meeting on the
Okay.
20th, yes.
And I'm assuming that that would be the timeline that we would want? I mean, I don't know, since he's bringing it up, I'm asking. Like,
Yeah, if the DDA rejects the timeline, then the agreement is dead.
oh, okay.
So I kind of look to them to be comfortable with this. We're involved, but, you know, this really is a DDA request for proposals, request for interest. And so I would hope that the DDA will accept the timeline and that it will work.
So that's the checks and balance, that's what I'm getting at. If
Yes.
they don't like the timeline, then, okay.
Right.
And I just would want to reiterate, yeah, I think this is a really exciting step for the DDA, that they're actually, you know, moving. I mean, that is the middle name, you know, the downtown development. So, I mean, I think it's an exciting time that they're moving into this development phase and looking at what they can, you know, do and what can happen with the properties that are under either town or DDA or pending ownership of one of those entities. And so we look forward to what the party will bring. And we did look at some initial, I think, in the interview process, and we were excited about what the potential was in the initial RFP, so an exciting time. Any other questions? If not, I would seek a motion.
Can I ask one other question for a motion?
Sure.
So we're not beyond that yet. When I read through this in item 4, and I'm not calling Mr. Arnold out on this, I just noticed that it was written saying that the town item, and I don't know if that's a subsection already. I'm on, in our document on page 392, item D, where it says the town designates Kelly Arnold as its authorized representative with respect to its performance under this agreement. Is that the normal course of action to have town manager? I'm just,
It is,
Section 1 of
I'm sorry, I.
4D, yeah.
4D.
can you give me a page number? I'm trying to catch
Yeah,
up.
it's
Page
page
4
5
of
of
5.
Okay.
Sorry, in the document, it's page 5 of 5.
Yep,
Or
last
5 of
paragraph.
5, sorry.
I'm not asking, saying that it's wrong, I'm just asking whether or not that's normal to have the town manager as the authorized representative.
In most agreements, we appoint someone to serve as our representative. So if it's an agreement for engineering services, it's usually someone in the engineering department. In this case, because Kelly's department is most involved with the DDA, that's where we go with that.
Okay. That was just something that caught my eye as I was skimming through it.
And then, so where is the DDA executive director? Where's his authorization with respect to the agreement?
Just a second. I'm still trying to catch up to where you are. in this.
It's 5.5 and item D, page 5 of 5. So it'd be 4D.
There's mention of the executive director on 6 of 6 and item D as well.
Sorry, I'm just, Kelly, help me out here. Come on.
So it has town and then
So
DDA.
the town governance representations. So there's that one, where's the DDA?
Assume the parallel language is
Right there.
sub D under
Yeah,
number
well, yeah, I see
5.
that there, but,
That's what I was-
and what happens if parties don't agree? Which one supersedes?
If the parties don't agree, we don't have an agreement. Oh, I see, if the
Between the town and
DDA,
the DDA. Because they're both, as far as I can tell, designated as authorized representatives on either side.
I understand. I can't predict a situation where that may occur. If it does occur, then it will be up to us to work with Brinkman to resolve that disagreement. If it can't be resolved, then the redevelopment plan, which is the objective of this, then the redevelopment plan will either not happen, or we'll have to have enough room to address the concerns of both parties.
Because the signatures on this relay to more the DDA, because the chairman is actually signing this.
Correct. And so what I foresee is that the executive directors of each of those two entities, Kelly in our case and Mr. Ashby in the case of the DDA, would, if they disagree, attempt to resolve those disagreements in a way that can be built into the redevelopment agreement and ultimately be executed by the DDA and whoever the development partner may be.
And the developer is agreeable to everything in the agreement?
Yes, because we have been through its form with the developers council and other representatives of the developer. The only thing that's missing is this timeline, which we expected to come from them.
Okay, and I believe the applicant is here.
Oh,
Did you want to ask that of him?
we have a representative of Brinkman. Great. Come forward, yes. I didn't realize that.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Council. Jay Hardy, President of Brinkman. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I won't elongate your meeting any more than it has been. Just a couple things. We did actually submit our schedule that our town attorney is referring to, but we sent it to the DDA and apparently it didn't get to the town, so I apologize for that.
It's been orphaned, but we'll
Yeah,
find it.
but I do have it in front of me, the Exhibit C, and so Matt Ashby has that as we speak. Just a couple of real quick things. You know, we're excited to be here. The best part about, not the best part, one of the really cool parts is I drove about 4 minutes to be here. And usually when I do developments, I get to drive a lot further. You know, my background, I was the executive director of the Downtown Development Authority in Fort Collins for about 7 years, working on the Foundry Project in Loveland, doing a lot of stuff in downtown Fort Collins. We're here because we believe in Northern Colorado and that we believe in the things that you guys are doing here, that we are doing as our community. I just graduated a son from a high school who would have loved to gone across the street to have coffee, so I was excited to see that. But, you know, these are some great things are happening in our community, and it really is our community, so for me to have the opportunity to be, you know, working close to home is exciting for us. Just a couple of quick dates I'll throw to you that in our schedule. We've got the executing of a redevelopment agreement on July 13th of 2018, so we're about 10 months from now. We expect to be back in front of you with a deal with a short window behind that to start construction and some entitlements that happen. So in our entitlements, we have that working basically right behind that to early October, and then a groundbreaking ceremony on the 19th of November. We wanted to make that happen right before Thanksgiving and get things going before we get to Christmas of 18. So that's our schedule on that first phase. We think because of environmental and some other things on what we call the second and third lots as you move west, there's some other challenges there. But we did not want to delay the opportunity here, and we're excited to be there. Obviously, the tragedy that Mill is a big deal. And Steve Schroyer and Blue Ocean are good friends of ours, and I'm looking forward to visiting with him and what those plans could be on how we can further connect the community across 392. So if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. Otherwise, I'll step back, but thank you for a few minutes to speak.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Are there any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, then I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 2017-71.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Mr. Bennett and a second from Mr. Rennemeyer approving resolution number 2017-71. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to item 13, resolution number 2017-72. Resolution approving intergovernmental agreement between and among the Town of Windsor, Town of Severance, and North Lake Metropolitan Districts for initial funding of the North Sewer Line Extension. Legislative action and presentation from Mr. McCarter. Mr. McCarter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is another agreement with two local entities, the Town of Severance and the North Lake Metropolitan District. North Lake is a district that overlays the area at the northwest corner of State Highway 257 and Harmony Road. That is the area that has been announced as the target for the Rocky Mountain Sports Park. And as you know, that area, although in Windsor, has not yet received sanitary sewer service from Windsor because of its distance from the current terminus of the sewer line. This agreement gets us into the initial phases of design, easement acquisition, and selection of a contractor to perform the work. Given the aggressive schedule that the Rocky Mountain Sports Park has indicated, we are trying to get this agreement lined up so that we can get started early next year. The agreement essentially has the three governmental partners sharing equally in the first phase, and the expectation would be if there are subsequent phases, we would also share equally in those expenses. The initial phase involves, as I said, some design work, some potential eminent domain work, including the acquisition of rights of immediate possession so that the line can be constructed, and then also working to select a contractor. We have retained the services of Will Welch. As you may recall, Mr. Welch is the project manager for our Public Works Service Facility up on 15th Street. That that experience has taught us that Mr. Welch is experienced, and he certainly has the qualifications to serve as project manager on this project. The engineering department here in Windsor has worked with Severance and its engineer to come up with a preliminary alignment for the line. Mr. Wagner has worked very closely with us to make certain that we're aware of where it may go. And we have also come up with a very preliminary estimate of the costs, which are included in your materials tonight. That cost estimate, however, does not include things like getting permission from landowners to run the pipe through their property. We don't know what that will cost, but we know we're going to need to hire some appraisers to help us with that, some surveyors, and a lawyer, which is the next item on your agenda this evening. With all of that, plus the cost, potential cost of design and construction, the initial phase, the phase one contribution from each of the three parties will be $500,000. That figure is probably generous, but we wanted to make certain that the downstroke is adequate to handle all of the demands that we think we are going to see in the first phase. The agreement says if we don't spend those dollars in phase one, they carry over to the next phase or phases, so that we are not just dumping $500,000 apiece into this project without some expectation that it will be used to actually build the line, as long as we can get it designed. We will get to the point where we can price it and get contractors interested, then we'll get to final design, then we hope to start building it. The timetable for this is rather aggressive, but we're trying to accommodate someone who would like to be open, at least on a limited basis, a year from now, October or November of next year. That timetable may change depending on other things that are happening up there with the acquisition of property and some other things, but that's what we're trying to do with this agreement, is accommodate the initial phase of infrastructure planning. So that's what this agreement is about. If you need further detail, I'm happy to answer your questions.
So the IG is regarding cost sharing?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
Yep. It does identify that it will ultimately be our line. Windsor will own and control the line. Windsor will control the project management. Windsor takes the lead on this. So it is a pretty important statement when it comes to who's really in charge of this. And the reason for that is that ultimately, when it's built, Windsor will control the line.
And there will be separate agreements forthcoming during the course of this period of time on how the other two entities are going to meter and such into the line, so we can keep track of that and such.
So here, let me follow up on what Kelly said a second ago. The agreement, as initially drafted, had all of the phases built into it. It was start to finish. And then we started having a conversation about maybe we ought to break this first phase into its own agreement, which is what we've done. But you can see that for illustrative purposes, we've laid out the future phases in this agreement to express our intention that this is where we're going. And that is a component of this, an operations and maintenance agreement that allows the other entities or the land area served by them to tap into the line.
Where's the condition in the agreement that shows that this is contingent upon this project?
This agreement does not contain that contingency. This agreement assumes that the entities will put their money in and we'll get started.
Irregardless of if we have a project that works, because my conversations previous to this were predicated that we would have a contingency in this, that if we do not have the project connected to this, or a project of a certain magnitude related to this, we would not proceed with this.
So Tommy, let's talk about the conversation you and I have had about that. So it's called out as item 4 that there's a anticipated significant development. And I think what Ian and I talked about that condition, Mayor. And I think the thought is that the next phase certainly wouldn't happen. And what would happen is that you would have this, what this first phase allows you to do is design and attain right-of-way, which are still all important components of the sewer line eventually?
But maybe not in this hurried fashion, which is costing us more and having to acquire all these eminent domain issues at a sooner time period than what we might normally. We would not probably be as aggressively. I mean, this has been sitting dormant, this
Yeah.
project, until,
Yeah.
this opportunity until this particular project. And there's like a $1.5, $2 million already, committed. I don't want us to have a commitment to something if at the end of the day, there's, for whatever reason,
Right.
there is not a project to be had.
So let me reveal to you some conversations I have had with the other parties to this agreement, the representatives of those parties. Specific to that concern, particularly the representative of the North Lake Metropolitan District, which is the developer-controlled metro district. What I indicated to council for the districts is that the town board tonight is presented with an agreement that does not have that contingency. And that if the town board is reluctant to approve this agreement in the absence of that contingency, the town board won't approve the agreement. If the town board isn't satisfied that this is a sure enough thing, that problem falls on particularly the developer and its district. So what I have been told by the representative of the districts is, number one, the districts have approved the agreement. I have seen a signed version of this agreement by the districts. So they are committed to investing in this. The districts have also indicated to me that considerable progress was made over the weekend towards satisfying some of the concerns of both the purchaser and the seller, the parties to those transactions, so that the stumbling blocks have largely been set aside. I was authorized to make those representations to you, but I told council that that doesn't mean that this board will necessarily be satisfied to the point where you will approve this agreement. I'm not making any representations to them about whether you will approve this agreement under the current state of those negotiations, because I can't.
Because I am not satisfied, because I have been told for months that something was going to happen, and we have yet to see anything happen. I'm happy to hear that there is some progress that is commencing towards this, but I don't want to commit ourselves to something because I have been told for months at a time that we have something pending and forthcoming and have yet to see the delivery of that.
And it doesn't hurt, prospectively. Obviously they have the schedule. But if you want to wait to see something that proves that out, this just gets delayed until that time.
I am entirely comfortable with you not taking action on this tonight, and I've told council that. And so don't feel that I am recommending that you approve this agreement if you have any misgivings about the state of, or the certainty of that development or any particular development at that corner. I understand your hesitation, and I'm not here to push you in any particular direction. So if you take no action on this tonight, I will let the other partners know, and we'll see what becomes of it. But at least you know the negotiations have been completed, the form of the agreement is acceptable, but I understand if you don't want to take action on this. It dies for lack of emotion is what could happen.
Okay?
Well, what if we do approve it and the project doesn't happen? What are we left with? We have some design of a future sewer line and.
You have a design, you have the permissions of the landowners for immediate possession. You have the tools by which to seek bids from contractors. So you do have some things that you don't have today, but as far as actually breaking ground, entering into a contract with a contractor, those things are not called for under this Phase 1 agreement.
But we don't have guarantee of a project or a project of the magnitude that we were looking at. It could be a project way less than what we are being told now.
But we're not obligated to go on to Phase 2. If we agreed to this and it fell apart, we're not obligated to go to that next phase. We would just
Right.
done.
You would stop. And let's say that there is surplus, there are surplus dollars left from the initial contributions. This agreement says we refund it pro rata to the parties who put it in. So that's, the dollars don't go into a black hole waiting indefinitely. They would, if we can't reach a phase 2 or subsequent phases agreement, the dollars would be returned to the extent they haven't been expended.
And does this delay anything? I mean, if they come back in 3 or 4 weeks and finally come to an agreement, are we now 4 more weeks behind?
I would probably take this as a cue not to start anything on the project until the agreement's signed.
But it may be the incentive needed to finally get some action one way or the other. Mr. Bennett?
Adam.
Oh, sorry.
Couple questions. The source of our funding,
Excuse me, I was kind of.
what budgets are we taking this money out of?
Sewer
The
fund.
sewer fund,
Just the sewer fund?
right.
Does that for eminent domain, is that appropriate use of funds for eminent domain?
It is an appropriate use
Okay.
of eminent domain
Okay.
powers. And I guess I should reinforce this too, that this agreement does not authorize eminent domain proceedings.
Yeah.
Nor does the retention of counsel, the next item on the agenda. That's an entirely separate statutory process.
I had another question.
Sure.
This is for all of us, board, staff, everybody. What pieces of evidence would we want to see to give us confidence that there would be a significant project going up in that area? Did it make
Can you
sense?
say that again?
A signed agreement?
What evidence would we want to see that would give us the confidence that there's going to be a significant development up north there?
An agreement between the seller and the purchaser.
Well, certainly a contract for the land transaction
Okay.
that has a closing date that's realistic. Even that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you have a viable project. What it means is that the land might turn over. The districts also need to take some steps to bring some territory into future inclusion areas. The districts are prepared to take those steps and do that pretty rapidly. There are also some parcels that are proposed for this development that are not yet annexed into Windsor. The Swanson property, and there's another parcel I can't recall. So there are a number of steps that would have to be taken to make that sports park model occur. But even at this stage of the game, even if you saw contracts or closings or even deeds transferring the title of the property, that doesn't necessarily mean the project that they've announced is happening. I can't give you much more assurance than that.
I know. Is there a way to include a clause or something in the writing here that would protect the interests of the town, but not delay the opportunity for the project to go forward?
My recommendation would be to not approve the agreement until you're satisfied that the project's going forward. I mean, to build in protections that give the town an out, those rights would, in all fairness, need to extend to everybody, and then what's the point of having the agreement? So I kind of see that either you have an agreement that gets you going and gets you moving forward, or you don't approve the agreement.
Mr. Rennemeyer?
No, my biggest concern is going along with everybody else on the panel here, which is the price tag with not having the contract. I mean, I understand that this may need to be designed at some point down the line, and probably the full agreement here I agree with, but until we know, is this the time to commit this money?
Just a little update, the town of Severance would look at this a week from tonight. Their next regular meeting is Monday the 18th. And they may have some of the same concerns. So you're not alone in being concerned about this as a municipality. I think it's our greater concern because we are ultimately responsible for the line and retaining the project manager and all of that.
We're taking the lead.
Correct.
And this could come back in 2 weeks anyway, that doesn't seem like
Right.
a tragedy.
So what are I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not gonna support this resolution, because I don't think, until I know that the project is moving forward in some capacity, I can't in good conscience, approve this at this point in time.
And I wanted to ask Mr. Carter about a taking up of a vote and it failing versus just not even making a motion, you know, per se. I mean, what's the pro con, I guess, et cetera? I haven't had this come up since I've been on the town board, so.
So someone could move to postpone it.
Okay.
You could postpone it indefinitely, or you could postpone it to a date certain. You could do that. That's just a parliamentary step. The mayor could call for a motion, and in the absence of a motion, this matter dies. It doesn't go anywhere. The other step is someone could make a motion and it could die for want of a second, in which case no action is taken. It fails. So there are a number of steps you can take. I don't know that postponing to a date certain makes much sense, because if really what you're waiting for is steps that you don't know how long they will take, then perhaps you just don't you don't have a motion. It dies for want of a motion.
Can we postpone until we have some concrete piece of evidence that would give us the confidence in the
Yes.
project?
That's indefinite.
And in essence, that's postponing indefinitely. The motion would be to
Indefinitely.
postpone indefinitely.
And I think that, for the record, sends a better message, because then you at least have said that you agree in
We're still
concept
willing
with
to
the proposal.
entertain this at some
Right.
point.
The message is we want to see something concrete to give us confidence.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's certainly appropriate.
So if you're looking for a motion, I would move to postpone indefinitely resolution number 2017-72.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to postpone indefinitely resolution number 2017-72. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 14, resolution number 2017-73. A resolution pursuant to section 9.1G of the Windsor Home Rule Charter appointing Edward Bleisner of Wellborn, Sullivan, Meck, and Tooley PC to serve as special counsel to the town of Windsor with respect to eminent domain matters associated with the Windsor North Sewer Line Extension Project.
Madam Mayor, I recommend you move to postpone action on this indefinitely as well,
Okay?
because they're tied together, and there's no point in appointing Mr. Bleesner if we don't have the agreement to share in his expenses.
Okay. So can I so move, or do one of my fellow board members?
I would recommend
Is there-
someone else.
Is there somebody on the
Mr.
board
Bennett.
who wishes to
Madam
make
Mayor,
that
I
motion?
move that we postpone resolution number 2017-73.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Bennett and a second from Mr. Redemeyer, postponing indefinitely resolution number 2017-73. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
Moving on to item D, communications. Communications from town attorney. Anything further, Mr. McCarter?
I have nothing further. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Communications from town staff. Mr. Balstead, anything further? Mr. Wagner? Ms. Johnson? Ms. Emo? Chief?
No communication.
Ms. Garcia? And Ms. Malone? Communications from town manager, Mr. Arnold.
Just looking at your future town board meetings. Next week, we will be having some guests in to give you an update on the express lanes, and it sounds like you had that the other day, but we'll hear a little bit more about their bidding process and then how they're going through that. We'll get back to the Metro District, follow-up discussion. We'll be actually you know, we have some questions that you raised, we'll be discussing, but really, I think we'll be asking you, what do you wanna do next? Do you wanna do further work on the policy, or take input, or discuss it and such? And then the housing policy, which is your current workforce housing policy, review of that, and then discussion of what's going on within the region about this issue, and then what, if anything, you may be interested in continuing to improve or modify your current policy that you have on board, on books right now. September 25th, we have the code enforcement abandoned vehicles and house discussion, and then also the utility task vehicle. This is, and I made a request to have you look at that, that is allowed by legislation now to have municipal use of that and within town limits. We'll review that with you. On October 2nd, we'll have a whole bunch of park discussions, Parks Master Plan update. Eric's ready to come back and finalize all that discussion, kind of what's going on with Boardwalk Park discussion. We had some about events, activities at Boardwalk Park, kind of a summer review, maybe some ideas that you might be interested in looking at for improvements there, and then the whole 3-2 beer discussion coming up that we had to address sooner than later. That is out there. I just want to remind you that on October 7th at 7:30 a.m. is your budget work session. And so that is a Saturday. We hope to get that out at least a week in ahead, so you have your reading time for that material. That's all I have as far as report.
Okay. Communications from town board members. Okay. Oh, Mr. Bennett.
I would just echo what Mr. Adams said earlier. I really appreciate the work that the staff put in on roadway improvement plan and fees and sewer water plans. A lot of detail was very, very, very helpful. Thank you.
I do believe this is Cities and Towns Weeks.
Yes.
Does somebody want to report, like maybe what some things we're doing, or do we know what we're all doing? I know I'm having lunch on Wednesday with the
You are.
seniors at 11:30
That is in my
at the rec
calendar.
center. We do have coffee with the mayor this Saturday at the new Starbucks drive-through
And I
on
know
Main
there's
Street.
touch a truck events going on throughout the school district. Friday is our primary day that we're going out and about. But I do not have that right in front of me. I'm sorry
Okay.
about that. But thank you for reminding
Okay,
me.
so just to, yeah, Chief?
Police officers have a lunch at all the schools.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And that's all I have, so, if nothing else, then I would seek a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn?
Second?
Motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Mr. Bennett to adjourn. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. We are adjourned. Thank you.